The only thing that matters is passing judgment in a society that claims to hate judgment. All right, folks, welcome to the Virtue Signal. I'm Alfonso Rachel. We got Bill Whittle, and you know our job. Our job is to get a more clear view of what virtue is. So we're not we're not ruled by the so-called virtues of these perverts, whatever their virtual
Whip you into
virtue
submission,
is.
that's our job.
All right, before they do. And you know, it's almost that kind of like a whipping thing, this is going to hurt me more than it hurts you. And you know, it's all out of love. And what did that one comedian say? Well, let me get a baseball bat and show you how much I love you.
Yeah, that's right.
And speaking of comedians, I guess, Dave Chappelle, did he get the Will Smith treatment? Somebody ran up on stage. Oh my God, it's an epidemic. It's an epidemic, Bill. Somebody ran up on stage. And I don't know why. And I guess Twitter blew up with it because Dave made a joke and said that it was a trans man. And because of all the things that Dave Chappelle has been dealing with in terms of that. And, but it turns out this person was a homeless, aspiring actor. I don't know what he was disgruntled or angry about. But the reason why I bring
Everything.
up, and you know what? I kind of don't blame the guy. There's a lot to be mad at. But don't let that stuff rule you, man. Don't let the sun go down on your wrath, if you will. But my thing is, Dave Chappelle has kind of like become, I guess, a hero to, the more right-leaning end of the culture. And, I guess I just kind of like to explore. I know the answer seems simple, but I want to dig a little bit deeper into it. But what do you think, Bill, about, I guess I would pose a question to you this way. A lot of times, conservatives often say, who cares what these celebrities think? I hear that all the time. These celebrities get out there and they say whatever they want and stuff like that. Yeah. And thank you. You better care. But that's what they keep saying. Who cares what these people think? And then all of a sudden, when a celebrity says something that's, I guess, halfway, maybe a little bit conservative or patriotic, all of a sudden,
carry them on their shoulders and.
Yes, they get it out. What's that thing called? They get out the litter and they carry them on their shoulders and stuff like that.
Exactly.
So what do we say to something like that?
Well, there's a lot to say here. I know the dynamic. I look. There were times when I didn't particularly. It's not like I didn't like Dave Chappelle, but I didn't have a particular opinion on him, other than the fact that he was just very, very funny. He's been consistently hilarious guy. He's a brilliantly hilarious guy. And another person who, unlike Chappelle, who I was just fairly neutral on, except for the fact that I thought he was funny. Another person lately who's started to get my respect is Russell Brand, who I despised. I mean, I just loathed him. There's something about him that just really bothered me. And now Russell Brand has just had this enormous kind of a, let's question things. And now he's got, millions of views every time. So now it's like, hey, this guy's kind of on our team. Elon Musk, same kind of thing, right? So what's really going on here? Well, in terms of the assault, he did get the Will Smith treatment, and it's fair to call it the Will Smith treatment because it was Will Smith who broke the vessel, right? You could basically say civilization is a series of behaviors that lives inside a series of little porcelain jars, and we call it civilization because those jars are delicate and they're decorated and they're beautiful to look at, but they're fragile. And the reason that uncivilized people are uncivilized is because they cannot control their behaviors to live inside this little porcelain jar. And Will Smith took this little jar that says that you don't strike somebody for something that they say, especially when it's their job to say things like this, right? When we talked about the Will Smith thing before, I said, look, if this guy had insulted my wife in a bar to her face, in her presence, and said something really, really low, that would be a different story. She's a celebrity. He's a celebrity. They're at a celebrity event. The guy who's the host is there to insult people, and that's how it works. So what Will Smith did was he basically He broke that container, and the container is, okay, if you don't like a joke that somebody makes about you, get up and leave, or heckle the guy, or do something. You don't go up and strike somebody for telling a joke in a civilized society, especially a professional comedian, right? That's their job. You paid a ticket to go in there and hear this guy say things. And if you don't like one of those things, you wouldn't be the first person to walk out of a comics act because he was offended by something. That kind of thing happens every day.
Yeah.
But to get the Will Smith treatment means that what Will Smith did in front of the whole world legitimized it. So there's the first thing, normalized it. The second thing is, and this is the thing to worry about, is that when the left doesn't get its way, it immediately gets violent. Mm-hmm. Immediately gets violent. And I don't find it funny or ironic. I just find it interesting, fascinating, you might say, given your shirt. I find it fascinating that the conservatives, who are the ones with all the guns, are the ones who are well-mannered, well-behaved, and completely under control as a general rule. That all of these violent outbursts, all of these resulting violence, the George Floyd thing, BLM thing, Occupy Wall Street, all of these left-wing movements, let's not forget the Great Leap Forward, and let's not forget the Bolshevization or Nazification, and all those other things with 100 million people dead. They operate on such an emotional level, on such a childish level, that they do what children do. When they see something, like if they see somebody take a toy that they think belongs to them, they'll just hit them. And that's what Will Smith has done. He's normalized this. And on some level, I feel a little sorry for Will Smith, because I don't think Will Smith wanted to. In fact, I know he didn't want to do it. He's got a really very strange relationship with his wife, an open marriage and all the rest of it. And he's been degraded and insulted. But if you look at the footage with the Chris Rock thing, Chris Rock makes a joke and Will Smith just laughs. And then Jada turns that look on him. And 7 seconds later, while it's off camera, Will Smith gets up and basically destroys a convention that we've had that marks civilized behavior. Civilized people can take a joke. They may not think it's funny, but they can take a joke. And when I think about things that I like the most in terms of just the entertainment that I grew up with, by far my favorite TV shows from the past, my single favorite TV shows after Star Trek, were the Dean Martin roasts. And the Dean Martin roasts, and I bring this up because it's very important, the Dean Martin roasts were nothing like the modern roasts on Comedy Central. Right. On Comedy Central now, it's essentially a very low-level person being insulted by people he's never met and does not know. And those insults are not clever insults about the person's character. They're just generic put-down jokes that could apply to anybody. Mm-hmm. The reason I wanted to bring up the Dean Martin roasts were because when you would watch these people making fun of each other, the reason that show not only worked but just made you feel good was it was so transparently obvious that these people loved each other, right? Mm-hmm. That they actually loved, respected, admired, revered each other. When you would see Don Rickles making a joke at the expense of Dean Martin, you could laugh at it, and Dean Martin could laugh at it and Rickles often went in the maudlin at the end of his act, because at the end of the act or whatever, Rickles would turn to him and say, in the Rickles roast, he said it at the beginning. He says, I don't want this to get lost in the credits or cut from the show. Dean, if it weren't for you, I wouldn't have had a career. I'd be nobody. I'm standing here today because of you. Anyway, you miserable low-life alcoholic. But see, this is the thing that's happening with that, is that those things work because not only of the mutual respect and admiration, but they also worked because everybody understood that that's what's going to happen tonight, right? We are going to hear people insult each other. That's why we're going. And these are like legendary figures. You know, you got Ronald Reagan and you got Jimmy Stewart and, all these guys. Mm. And there was an understanding of how it works. For this guy to go into a comedy club, here's something he doesn't like, and smack Dave Chappelle, or for Will Smith to be sitting in the Academy Awards with his multi-millionaire wife and his multi-millionaire self, and listen to another multi-millionaire make jokes about everything and everyone like they always do, and suddenly, he's going to be outraged enough to he shattered this convention zone. And if I was a comedian, I'd be real worried about it. And I suspect that when we talked about things like, oh, Dave Chappelle may be on our side, or maybe Musk is on our side, or maybe Russell Brand is on our side, they're coming to our side because they realize what the left has made and what, to some extent, they helped create.
That's exactly what I was gonna say, man. It's like they helped to create this monster, and this thing, we bring up Will Smith because I guess now that's the definition of what it's called when you run up on stage, you and assault somebody. That's gonna be a joke that's tied to him. Even though people have done that before. Will Smith, like Jim Carrey, it was funny. Jim Carrey is gonna try to call out Will Smith for going up on stage and assaulting somebody. Jim Carrey went up on stage and sexually assaulted what's her name, Alicia Silverstone. Went up on stage, and I think she was only 18 at the time or something.
He walks up on stage.
Yeah, he walks. This is like one of those award ceremonies. Walks up on stage and just sticks his tongue down her throat, and she's like, it's like where was the permission?
Well, he didn't. That was in the world of Hollywood, that's not an assault. In the world of Hollywood, that's a joke. But hitting somebody is different, and that's why there's so much sexual abuse in Hollywood, because that's just the currency of the realm.
I mean, maybe at the time, I guess because Jim Carrey, it was a joke then, but I mean, with the whole Me Too movement,
it was completely inappropriate. I absolutely get your point, yes.
Or even actually, he did the same thing to Will Smith. He tried to walk up on stage and tried to make out with Will Smith. So it's like, even Will Smith got the treatment back then. But see, that's the thing that bugs me though, Bill, is that these people, they hide behind being comedians. They feel like they get a free pass to go ahead and do all this stuff. They want people to take them seriously. They help to try to control and steer the narrative of the culture. And then when they get called out on it, they say, what? We're just comedians, but you can't take a joke? Yeah. It's like, and I think it's really cowardly. And, but just like what, you were said earlier, they helped to create this monster. So like with Dave Chappelle, the language that he uses, using the B word, the N word, the F bombs, and all that sort of stuff. And it's like when you have a culture out there that, has the stigma on it of being so racist. And you got Dave Chappelle, whose material is laden with the N word. And white people like to go out there and repeat them jokes, and it's like, and
when
then
they repeat the joke, they say N word though.
Yeah.
Right. They don't say what Dave Chappelle said.
It's one of those things where it's like, is it okay for me to say it? And if they get the slightest idea that it's okay to say it, they will say it. A prime example would be Quentin Tarantino. All right?
Yeah, Bill Burr makes a bunch of jokes about that. He said he's got an entire great routine. He says when you can tell the N word is coming, But anyway, I digress.
And Tarantino does the same thing. When he feels like it's comfortable to say, he just lets it go. I mean, he writes. Samuel Jackson gets to make a whole bunch of money, reading off scripts that Tarantino writes. So it's one of those things where you make it where the culture feels safe to say it, and then complain about the culture saying it. As if the N-word is like this okay thing to say. Oh, it's just a term of endearment and we just say it to be funny and stuff like that. When that dude who ran up on stage and attacked Dave Chappelle got his behind stomped, they called him the N-word a bunch of times and it wasn't friendly. Even when they were taking it.
Let me just interrupt you for a second because I know you'll be interested in this. Do you know the first person who said the N-word on television, who that was?
No.
It was Red Fox in Sanford and Son.
Okay, yeah. Now that doesn't surprise me.
No, it doesn't surprise me either. But that's another example of having broken the container, right?
Yes.
It wasn't done, okay? And he did it in a courtroom, and it was funny, got a big laugh. But now, okay, now it's out. It's like our last show where they leaked the Supreme Court ruling. Now that's a thing. Now it's done. Every president from this point forward is going to be impeached. This is what I mean by smashing these containers.
Exactly, man. And now we're trying to take this egg that's cracked out and try to, you make an omelet with it and trying to put it back into the eggshell. It just isn't going to work. And it's a big problem now. And it's one of those things where I guess it's a problem that's too big for people to see. They don't see it anymore. They just think it's just something that's normal. It's like, you guys want this racism thing to stop. Part of it would be as easy as y'all stop saying that word and stop lying to yourself about the weight of it. It's almost like somebody sold their soul to the devil to come up with a word so laden with bitterness, hatred, and evil.
That's why it can't be spoken, Zoe.
Right.
Because
really,
there is so much emotional and historical weight behind it.
Yes. You know, I mean, it's a word basically that tells a person, you're less than a human being.
Yeah, it encapsulates the entire dynamic. It's one word that encapsulates the entire racist dynamic.
Absolutely. And the thing is, and people try to justify it and say that, well, you know, it can apply to anybody. There could be white N-words and Hispanic N-words. Like, no. Nobody says that word without thinking about a black person. Okay, you can go ahead and try to say that there can be other people who can be the N-word. It's like, no.
That's a ridiculous argument.
Basically what you're saying is that if you call like a white person N-word, what you're telling that white person is that, you know what, you're as low as a black person. That's what you're saying. It's a lazy way of saying the word Negro, right? Which is not offensive because it just means black, right? But it's a lazy way of saying it. And it's a way of saying that you are low, you are less than a person, you are subhuman is what it means. And when you have people out like Dave Chappelle who makes big bucks out of saying the word as if he gets like $100 every time he says it. Well, these things create problems in the culture. He's getting heat from the LGBT community. It's like, dude, you helped create that monster. You promote that you love lesbians. All right. You're turned on by lesbians. Well, how did you think this was going to turn out? That's all part of it. You helped to drive that narrative. All the smoking weed is like, America has more access to weed than ever. And it just so happens that America's becoming more and more paranoid, ain't it?
I wouldn't say that our test scores are rocketing towards the stratosphere either.
Right. And are people becoming more mellow despite that weed that they're smoking? This whole natural herb that people are supposed to feel so good about ain't really that natural anymore, because people will tell you, so it's a lot more potent than it used to be. Well, if it was just so natural, why couldn't you just leave it alone? You know, when you got people out there saying that, well, it helps me with my anxiety. What do you mean it helps you with your anxiety? Everybody knows that smoking weed makes you paranoid. So it's like these things that people come up with. And these are things that, just like you said, Dave, you helped to drive this narrative. And now these same people that you entertained are now coming after you because you indulge in this debauchery and you became a millionaire for it, and it's really, Bill, that's what's called selling out. And don't get me wrong, because he's brilliant, man. He's got a God-given talent and build. Nobody can do what Dave Chappelle does.
No, I agree with that.
He's got the build for it. He's got the face for it to make his jokes stick. He's built for it. That's God-given. And it's like, it's so natural to you, man, that you could actually be funny without ever saying the N-word again. It's just a gift. You can be funny without ever saying the B word again. It's like you got this culture out there that's so hung up on women's rights and women's empowerment. And he's saying the B word over and over again, which is another thing that dehumanizes women.
Yeah, Cosby,
so you're saying,
for all his faults, Cosby did that. I mean, Cosby made me cry. I was watching him when I was in college. I watched Cosby's show and I thought it was so funny. It was just made me cry. But he didn't go there.
Yeah, he didn't have to. I mean, it's an unfortunate thing about Bill Cosby, but it's the point still stands. Just because somebody may drop the ball on this moral virtue that they're supposed to have, it doesn't mean that the virtue itself isn't invalid. There's just certain things that just like we were speaking of earlier, dude, there's just certain things that you should have a clear cut view of what is sacred and what should be valued, and you don't mess with it.
Yeah, my two favorite comedians are Brian Regan and Foster Brooks, and neither one of them work blue, as they used to say. By the way, this widespread marijuana use, you can also attribute a fair amount of that to the salty snack industrial complex. Big Munchie is kind of behind the rampant pot use in America.
I love it, Big Munchie.
Yeah. So I think what we should, the takeaway should be, first of all, I think more and more people on the left are realizing what they've created. I remember hearing John Cleese just going on about how repulsive it is, this political correctness. You can't even tell a joke anymore. Well, John, you're a big old left-wing socialist, and this is the world you built for yourself. These are the politics you supported. You did nothing but mock conservatives in America. Here's your world. How do you like it? I think it's clear. I think it's very, very clear all across the board that the left is in full retreat, and that their retreat is accelerating. And I suspect that person struck Dave Chappelle because he said something. Do we know it was it about a trans comment for sure? Do we know?
I don't know if it was for
Let's
that.
just say it was, because the dynamic is the same whether it was or wasn't. So now you've got two emotional systems at work here. You've got a childlike, emotion-filled person in the audience who hears something that he doesn't like and has the desire to strike people because they're undisciplined and they're children, and now he's got the social proof that this is okay. So where I'm going with that is the left has given it the full court press and they failed. And they have left a lot of wreckage in their wake. It's going to take a long time to repair all of this stuff, a long time. But they've given it everything they have, and they failed. They failed miserably because nobody wants their ideas. But the thing that we need to be aware of is, in failure, they will not just, aw, shucks, I guess I was wrong. They will go to the scorched earth, the Götterdämmerung, the giant battle where the gods are defeated. They will do what other leftists do, what Hitler did and what all of them did. If they realize that they're going down, they're going to try and pull everything down with them. If they can't rule it, then everything is going to go. They're going to burn everything they can once they realize that they failed. And I think things like this are little data points that are at the beginning of a very big bell curve that we need to be aware of and prepared for. When they don't get their way, they will get violent. And we know this is true because this is what they accuse us of. And so when you smash these containers, this is what you get. And I want to make one last point on this idea, because you can always take a metaphor too far, and that's kind of how I make a living. But if you do think about these things like election integrity, like we're going to vote on election day in person and show an idea, that's a little porcelain container. Conservatives will say just because they're smashing containers doesn't mean you should smash containers. And they're right about that. But what I'm saying is, if they have smashed a container and that container is smashed, then you got to fight them by the rules of that smashed container. Does that make any sense? I'm not saying you degrade or damage institutions that haven't been damaged. But if somebody has destroyed an institution and you continue to play by the rules of that destroyed institution, right? Mm-hmm. You're going to lose. And if good people lose, then what difference does it make? It doesn't mean that we have to cheat on elections. It does mean that if we take the attitude of, well, as far as I'm concerned, I am going to vote and I've done my duty. Yes. But now, you've got to not only go and vote legally and do your duty, you got to get down there to the precincts at 4:00 in the morning and make sure there's no funny business going on, because that's the world that they have given us. And that's the world we live in now. Indeed.
And we always want to remain, catalytic. We don't want to be changed by these people, but we do have to adapt. As the word says, do not repay evil with evil. But at the same time, and you have to still have this common sense on how you're going to traverse this field. And, the Lord also says, don't cast your pearls before pigs. Because if you do try to get in there with the mud with them, they will destroy you. That's their territory. You always want to keep the higher ground. It's a better strategic vantage point anyway. So you always want to keep the high ground. The left does get violent. The left does get violent. They're always showing their true KKK colors. That's who the Democrats are.
It's true.
Whether it's KKK, BLM, Antifa, or the mask mob, whichever. That's just who they are.
Violence violence is legitimized for them because there's nothing beyond power.
Yes, yes. And, even with Chris Rock, and it shows the level of tolerance and grace on us so-called bitter gun clingers and stuff like that. We're actually defending Chris Rock. It's like, hey, Will, really, you had no right to do what you did. And this is Chris Rock, who's been another huge driving force of why the country is so divided.
Right.
And it's almost like, even back then, we were like, man, I wish somebody would come and slap these ideas out of his mouth, but we don't really want anybody to hurt the guy. It's like the word says.
It's wrong. It doesn't matter. It's wrong. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, the Lord says, look, I don't delight in the destruction of the wicked. I want them to see the light and live.
That's exactly, that should be on our money.
That's exactly right. But Bill, I think, we did a movie a while ago with C.L. Bryant, Runaway Slave. We were talking about these things. And, in the movie, I had mentioned that Hollywood is basically, they're driving a narrative that is basically going to end up leading them to a place where not even Hollywood themselves won't have a voice anymore.
That's already happened.
Yeah,
they have blasphemed their way out of relevance. Nobody cares. That's the only thing interesting that's happened at the Academy Awards in 20 years.
Yeah, well, the only thing that matters is passing judgment in a society that claims to hate judgment and frowns on and judges other people for assuming to make judgments. That's their culture. But all these people want to have their Twitter power to go and judge other people. Even if it's if they're like sharks, they smell a little bit of blood in the water, they'll turn on each other. Go ahead. I was
just going to say that the Twitter reaction with Musk buying Twitter is it's not surprising. It is illuminating because they're acting as if Musk bought Twitter to turn it into a conservative platform. They're acting as if by Musk buying Twitter, he's going to shut down their accounts the way they've shut down our accounts. Musk from the beginning has made it crystal clear. No, we're not shutting anybody's accounts. You can say whatever you want to say. And they take that statement of equality, because that's exactly what it is. That statement of equality, they take that as an assault. And it is an assault because nobody will buy their stuff unless they're the only brand in town. And that's why they have to silence everybody else so that there are no other opinions to contrast their miserable policies and philosophies with. So yes, if Musk says we're not going to censor conservatives on Twitter, and the leftists that run Twitter take this as an assault, I guess it is an assault to them. It's an assault to their tyrannical control of information. And I like to think, and I do believe, it's just the beginning of a trend. I mean, we are well past peak Facebook. And frankly, I want to know how much it would cost to buy YouTube. I think if the conservatives in the country each pitched in, I don't know, $50, could probably do it.
Indeed, man. And I guess that's what they want. They want the freedom to be able to go in and run up on people's Twitter stage and just tackle them and keep them from saying what it is that they have to say. And I guess they're afraid of and Musk, if anything that he's going to shut down or anything like that is their so-called anonymity.
That's an interesting point because really Will Smith slapping Chris Rock and this guy hitting Dave Chappelle, it's essentially what Twitter does, right? I don't like you, so I'm going to strike at you. I'm going to attack you. I'm going to make sure that you pay for saying something that I didn't like. Yes. And see, now we bring up another point, and I'll try not to get off into the weeds here too far, but when we talk about censorship, we've been marginalized by these social media platforms for a long time, but I've never really qualified it as censorship. It's their platform. Correct.
They have a right to do whatever it is that they want. If they don't like
absolutely.
my brand,
principles are principles. It's private property. We agreed to it. It was the biggest mistake that the political right has made, but we agreed to be hosted on their private property, and so therefore, since those are our principles, we have to abide by the mistake we made.
Right. I didn't pay to be on YouTube. I didn't pay to be on
Absolutely.
Twitter. It was free. So if they don't want to play ball, then that's their prerogative. I wouldn't call it censorship. When it became censorship is when we know that these platforms are beholden to people who hold office. You know, they're beholden to an ideology. They are operating at the behest of the state, and behest of the statists. Now it's censorship. When we know that these people are using their platform to promote an ideology, and when they are deliberately marginalizing people, beating out content that's contrary to their narrative, and like I said, when they're able to lobby this kind of stuff to make this happen, that's when it became censorship, and that's when it should be recognized as a problem.
Let me just jump in here on this, because it needs to be said after the argument about private property, which is all true. But YouTube, as an example, had to make a decision as to what it was. Was it a publisher or was it a carrier? If it was a carrier, their legal defense is, look, we're not if somebody posts Snow White on YouTube, right? Disney can't come after us. We're just a carrier. We're like providing the electricity. We're simply providing the video stream, and the people who are responsible for copyright violations or whatever are the individual people that post it to us as a carrier. Okay, but once you start selecting who gets carried and who doesn't, you're not a carrier anymore. Now you're an editor. Now you're a publisher. Now you are making decisions and affecting the outcome of what goes down the stream, and they want it both ways, and they've got it both ways. And if we get the House and the Senate, and we will, then the first thing we need to do is put some teeth and relook at that law and basically say, okay, YouTube, if you are a carrier, then you don't censor anything, with the possible exception of nudity or graphic violence, something like. But you can't make a statement, right? Either that, or if you're going to continue your censorship, your selection, if you're going to continue to manipulate the results, then you're no longer a carrier, and now Disney can come to you whenever somebody else posts, the latest clips from Obi-Wan Kenobi or whatever, right? Now Disney could sue you, YouTube, because you have already admitted that you're in control of what goes out that door.
Absolutely. And I reckon that is why they are so pro-LGBT, because they get to represent the B in the LGBT, because they want it both ways. Let me stop while I'm ahead. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to the Virtue Signal. For Bill Whittle, I'm Alfonso Rachel, and thank you guys. We'll see you again soon. Hey, make sure you share and support at BillWhittle.com. Thanks, y'all.